Hello, everyone. This is the XP Billionaires podcast. This is Rafe speaking. We have Irene. How are you today?
Awesome. I just helped my friend out at a con all day, so I'm a little tired.
That's definitely a trying experience. And we also have Sky today. How are you doing? Because you have definitely had a much more interesting week.
Well, actually, I had one very interesting day, and after that, a lot of sleeping. I just had some minor surgery done, so I'm pretty mellow. I'm pretty mellow because they got me on a lot of painkillers, but
It's gonna be a fun episode.
We'll see how that goes. If we hear any light snoring, we'll know why. And we want to thank everybody who did send in some well wishes. So thank you so much for that. I'm sure it helped make Sky feel better. I hope it did anyway.
yes, it's very lovely.
Yeah, Sky was pretty nervous prior, so it's nice to know people are pulling for you.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, let's do the check-in. I know it's probably been a little light for you, Sky, but I think you did finish something before your operation. What game did you finish recently?
I finally finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2! Yay!
And how many hours did you clock in that?
Oh god, it was over like 130, something crazy like that.
My God, no.
Probably one of the longest playthroughs you've done for anything at this point, even Disgaea.
Yeah, it beats any one of my Disgaea playthroughs, certainly. It's a wild ride. I highly recommend it. It's a great game.
Just be prepared to not play anything else for a while.
Well, I mean it too, like, you get what you put into it, right? I like side questing and whatnot, but not even like a fraction of I know of what some people did, so but frankly, as far as I'm concerned, there's only so many hours in the day.
Absolutely. The nice thing too is that it is a Switch title, so you have the option for portability, which means you can also play something on the television too on the side, so that kind of helps out.
Yeah, I've been continuing with Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. I'm near to the end. I'm in the last part. It's a hard game though. Sometimes it takes me a few tries to get through some of the maps, so it's kind of slow going.
All right, Irene, what have you been up to?
So after our marathon episode of talking about .hack, I went back to play .hack GU Last Recode and cleared the first game,
Awesome.
which people who follow me on Twitter saw me have a mental breakdown at Adelie's stupidity at the end of that game.
Oh, it gets better.
Oh, I'm sure. The fact that you informed me she gets dumber is like, oh my god, but seriously, Adelie, Haseo's a jerk. Slam that block button and move on. Like, he's a jerk to her all the time. All the time, without fail. And while I understand why, from his perspective, like, I don't know why she invests the time, to be honest.
Interesting fact about the games. I don't know if this applies in R2, but in R1, once you were given a member address, you could not remove it. That was one of the reasons why when you watched the .hack sign anime, Sora would regularly threaten people with a PK if they didn't give his member address or their member address to him.
I don't know, maybe.
And you guys were connected and could short mail each other at all times. I mean, I think the only thing you could have done was actually like contact the admins for harassment complaints or something like that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like that is a shitty system. That is a really shitty system, very much open to exploitation by a never-ending parade of assholes that exist on the internet.
well, yeah, and Sora was the king asshole, and well, he grew up to be another character in R2. Do you happen to know who that is?
I haven't discovered yet, but I'm guessing it's your least favorite one.
No, not at all.
Really?
I'll explain it to you later. But if you think about, I want you to think about it. Oh, did you ever watch .hack sign?
I did. I don't remember much of it because I was like, this. Everyone tells me this anime is great, but it's just a bunch of people sitting around talking when they could be fighting monsters.
Well, I'll I'll give you a little clue just to not fully spoil it. Sora was data drained by Skaith at the end of the anime. Do the math.
Well, that explains why that character is such a tool.
Yeah.
And like other than that, I finished off Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice for the stream, and thinking of putting together some thoughts for the WordPress site in the coming weeks to talk about that ending in a very spoilerific fashion, because I really, really, really like that ending and want to talk about it and how it moves me and how it makes me feel, because it, like, seriously, it was really, really, really fucking good. And it deserves a little bit more
attention.
Yes, it deserves more attention and more analysis done to like really get at it, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love to have something like that on the blog. So yeah, by all means.
That's what I want to do next, is like talk a little bit more about that ending, because it's really profound in my opinion. Like that game, that ending, I think elevates that game into the category of art.
No, I can see how. Absolutely. All right. As for me, it's actually been a little bit of a light week. I'm still plowing through Yakuza 4, and we'll probably start 5 as soon as I'm done it. I just finished the Saejima Taiga story, so the second storyline in the game. Saejima was, while just a really slow tank character, his storyline was actually really good because it's actually connected to the history of Goro Majima, and it's an excellent story, and I finally got to see some closure on what happened there. You get to see a little bit of what happens in Yakuza 0 for those of you who've been playing the games on the PS4, but you get to meet Taiga in 4 if you haven't played it already, which is kind of fun. Other than that, I've been focusing a lot on some portable gaming. I actually pulled out my 3DS and started playing Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey Redux, which I don't know why I stopped playing it. Yeah, it was a remake. I don't know why I stopped playing it when I first was playing. I actually really enjoy the gameplay on it. I must have just gotten distracted with something else, or I do the usual thing where I forget to save and then lose 3 hours of gameplay. That's a likely sort of scenario. But no, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, the first person dungeon delving style is not something I enjoy too much, but I'm not minding it in this case right now. So far so good.
It sounds very Etrian Odyssey in that regard.
Yeah, except you don't have to draw the map. The map is created for you as you go, which is much better in my opinion. I thought that idea with Etrian Odyssey was cool, but it just got really annoying after a while.
See, I liked it because it was I was able to mark off, like, here's the monster, this is the pattern they fought. Like I went really whole hog and made that map super useful to me.
Yeah, and I mean, more power to those who enjoy the game. It really wasn't my style in the end.
Yeah, like, and honestly, I can say, like, I really like the map making. The combat though was not great, because I found that you had to be super sure you were ready to handle what was on the next floor, or you just get wiped.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Well, let's get into today's topic, or this week's topic, I should say. So for the longest time, RPGs have created a much better sense of role playing when in the video game in style of RPGs, I should say. One of the ways they've started doing that has been adding conversation options, but more specifically, options that include difficult moral choices. In many cases, these choices can ultimately affect the story and even how NPCs interact with you. So I thought this week we'd talk a little bit more about the morality system in RPGs. So I got a couple questions here. I figure we'll do a nice round table as we like to do. So the first question I have is, which moral path do you guys typically lean towards on your first playthrough of a great game, and do you try any other options in subsequent playthroughs? So we're going to start with Irene. What do you got for me?
So the path I normally take is usually by default the good path, just because I find it hard to necessarily like lean hard into like the evil path, and also because I don't necessarily like doing the bad guy thing in those games because, well, they tend to be so polarized. You're either like a paragon of justice or a genocidal maniac, and there's nothing in between. And like I mean, I don't necessarily see myself as a genocidal maniac, so I'm like, I'm not always a good person, but I'm not that, you know? So like I tend to like try not to tend not to go evil because I find that the evil options in a lot of RPGs are just like over the top shitty. Just like I have to actively just be mean for the sake of being mean and no other reason. There's no redeeming quality to this action whatsoever. It's actually what I liked about some of the choices that you had to make in like Mass Effect and in like the Dragon Age games, like in BioWare's games in general. I found that their morality and their choices were less framed as right and wrong, but here are two choices, and they spelled out what the consequences could be of that action very clearly. And even in like Dragon Age Inquisition, there were times where you had more than two choices. It was like, yeah, so you choose this option. This character will like you and be recruitable. You choose this option. They will never like you again if you choose this option. Or you can just kill them and they won't be a problem ever again. Like there's more of a spectrum into what you could actually do, and I found that to be more realistic than like say Infamous's diametrically opposed morality system. Like I was an early one, so I'm going to like give it a bit of a pass, but like your options were literally like I could pet the dog or I could kick it into the fucking sun. And those were presented as equally valid paths. I'm like, shit is this? Anyway.
And I think that's what a lot of them are designed to do, though. I think especially with the BioWare titles, I think part of it is really more about attitude in a lot of cases, but other than just morality. Like this is actually leading into kind of my thing. Like yourself, I also tend to go the more heroic path, be more virtuous when playing through my games. But when there's that option where you can just have a snark victory, I will take it if the environment suits it, if the atmosphere suits it.
Oh, I will totally be a total asshole to somebody if it's just like I am going to deliver a scathing and savage burn and move on.
Yeah, and like for me, it was like I could keep going back to for the first Mass Effect game, and you're gonna hear me referencing it a lot because it was one of the games I remember a lot of the morality choices in. But the dealing with Conrad Werner in the first game, your fanboy stalker, and at one point he just you have to get to the point where you have to physically assault him and threaten him to leave you alone, and I did that.
Otherwise, he was just going to keep getting in the way. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he was just an annoying piece of garbage. And yeah, he comes back in 3 and ends up being somewhat useful, but at the same time, it's just like it's not worth it. It's not worth this like fanboy stalker accosting you every step of the way. And
Yeah, but
I don't know if it was really this like in the same style because I played as Fem Shep as opposed to Male Shepherd, but like I don't know if it's different in that regard.
oh yeah. So I played as Fem Shep as well, but that scene is definitely I remember it very well. That scene is played off as more like Shepard's like I have literally tried everything else to get through to you. That this isn't a fucking game. You are going to get yourself killed. Stop. And
Yeah.
actually, if you choose that option by Mass Effect 3, when you run into him again, he's like, yeah, I was a bit starstruck and kind of a dick. And I didn't understand that, like, I was putting myself in danger and endangering you, and I'm sorry. And Shepard, like, you have the option to let him off the hook in Mass Effect 3 for that, to basically, like, say, like, yeah, I accept your apology. I'm glad you understood what I was trying to tell you. So it plays off very much like Shepard's like, no, nothing else is going to get through to this person. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to do something kind of dickish. And even so, like it's not necessarily treated as like the like I don't remember it being treated as like the red option or like the evil option at the time.
Yeah, it didn't have to be, but it was definitely like it was just it felt like one, it felt like the right thing to do, but two, I just wanted him out of my way. Like that was
Yeah, for
essentially,
me, I was more like, you're just gonna get yourself killed if you keep this up, dude. Like, you're in over your head. This is not gonna go well for you. I guess I was just more concerned for him because he was clearly like too dumb to realize when he was in too deep, or too
yeah.
starstruck to realize when he was in too deep. So I was like, oh shit, this kid's gonna get himself killed, and it's gonna be all my fault. And that's the thing. I really like BioWare's morality systems because they tend to have more nuance to them. Where it's like, yeah, I am doing something decidedly not particularly heroic right now. But in the end, it's probably the best thing to do. Because if I don't do this, then something like through inaction, worse things will happen.
No, exactly. All right,
Anyway,
Sky,
sorry.
let's get you to chip in. What's your typical choices?
So, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I don't like being the bad guy usually in video games.
So basically, we're all a bunch of goody goodies. All right, you can all
Yeah.
make fun of as much as you want. Okay.
In fact, like I usually prefer games, Suikoden comes to mind, that reward you for doing the honorable thing. Like sometimes doing the honorable thing, not doing the honorable thing will cost you, will cost you best endings on multiple occasions. Now, sometimes in certain games, I will try other options on second playthroughs if they don't make me feel too scuzzy for choosing them. But sometimes the choices don't work out the way you think they will, and you end up horrified anyway. So,
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Actually, you know what? That actually leads me right into my second question for the topic. So, um, yeah, thank you. That's great. So yeah, let's just dive right into the next one. So the question number two that I have you guys ever made a moral choice in the game that you thought was the right way to go, but turned out to either be completely disastrous or have a completely different end result from your expectations? So we'll go around the table again. Irene, what do you got?
Every freaking game that has one of these morality systems in it. Every time, without fail, I will trip and face plant into something awful. Because I find, as much as sometimes they can be very nuanced, sometimes they are very poorly signposted. So you end up doing the exact opposite of what you thought you would do. Like, I remember, like, I can't remember exactly the choice in Fallout 4. I was playing, it was a Bethesda game. I was playing, and there was like, I think it had to do with this doctor who was performing illegal surgeries on people, and you had a choice to like let him go or do something else. And I was like, I made a snarky remark at him, and that immediately triggered combat, and I no longer had any option to try and talk him down. I was just snarking at him. I did not want to shoot him, but I was railroaded into this combat situation where I was like, well, shit, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to be a tool bag. When there were two other options that were very clearly be good to him and just fucking shoot him. You know? It
yeah.
felt like I was like bait and switched with this third option where I could just be like, okay, come on, man. Like, don't make me do this. Like, and just be kind of a smartass. But all it did was trigger the option that I didn't want.
Right.
And there are other times where the good choice is actually beyond my level of skill to obtain. So again, with that Dr. Quest in Fallout 4, you only get the option to talk him down if you have a certain skill set. And it's really early in the game, so it's very difficult to have, like, unless you're building conscientiously, you will have no option but to murder him.
Right.
Or, like in Dishonored, I know it's not necessarily an RPG, it's more of an action game, but you can only get the good ending if you go stealthy and kill nobody but your target on every level. Like, the more people you kill, the more chaotic and gross the entire city becomes, and the good ending's out of reach. Well, I'm just not skilled enough at that game to actually manage it. Like, I still remember it was like a fucking Gong Show one level when somebody spotted me and I was like, oh shit, I'll kill him because I had no choice. And then his buddy showed up and then his buddy showed up. It was like a fucking conga line coming into that hallway to the point where I no longer had to sneak around anywhere in the castle because everyone in it was in the hallway and they were all dead in a pile. It was just like, I'm like, what is this shit? Please stop coming! Or at least you're gonna, like, come all at once!
Oh dear.
It was so bad. I was like, why? This is so terrible. Or, again, like, as much as I said, like, Fallout before, there is no good option. Bethesda games, famously, their factions are, like, almost caricatures, to be honest. So it's like, yeah, we're gonna help the Siths because we believe that they are, like, free, they should be free from tyranny. And I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So we're gonna, like, beat terrorists and kill innocent civilians. Okay, what do you got for me, Brotherhood of Steel? Well, we want to help people and, like, make the wasteland a better place. That sounds great. Let's wipe out everything that's not human. Like, could one of these people not commit genocide while trying to, like, achieve their goals? Please.
I mean, maybe, but is that good storytelling?
I don't know. I would argue that no, it doesn't at a certain point. And I get into more of this, like, at the next question, but I'll talk a little bit about it now. It sort of elevates, like, you're shit, everyone is shit, there's no point in trying to make a difference because everyone around you is just as bad. The level of, like, both sideserism that is happening in those games, I'm just like, come on, guys. This, like, in real life, you don't have, like, every faction has, like, a homicidal, genocidal cartoon villain flaw that makes it like, I can't support you. Like, I still even remember in Skyrim, I was like, these guys sound like a nice bunch of folks, and they were like, we're really racist. I mean, like, why? Like, they was like, I like all of your goals, but, like, and we think we'll solve our problems by being really racist. And I'm like, there it is. It just
Yeah.
means that for me, I'm like, I don't necessarily need to be paragons of virtue, but their fatal flaws are always so drastic that I'm like, whoa, I don't think I can get behind this because I don't think we're actually going to achieve what you want to achieve this way. And I just find that, like, in their attempt to introduce nuance, they ventured into the realm of absurdity.
Okay. Well, let's move on to myself. Like, again, like I said, I'm going to be referencing Mass Effect a lot here. I think the one that stood out for me here was right near the end of the game when you're making the run for the Citadel while Sovereign's attacking, and you're faced with this choice just on the fly that the Citadel's council is their ship is under attack, and you have to make this choice right here and now. We should go save the council, or we have to keep pressing on. Given the situation, I decided to press on because you would think that the council itself would have a pretty good security detail. They did not. Because to my shock, in the second game, you learned that the council has been replaced because they didn't survive the assault on the Citadel.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't say who's taken over on the council at that point, but it was just like, oh my God, like you would think like the three most important people in this galactic alliance would be better protected or being able to escape better. But like it was me for like a first time player of Mass Effect when it kind of gave me a shock. It kind of made me realize that, oh my God, they've actually really built in that my actions have consequences and the choices I make are going to affect the story. And the fact that there were so many things that could be altered by these decisions was both exceptional, but also really scary because I didn't know what was going to happen next or later on or when I was going to find out that this decision was going to screw me over.
Yeah, they played a pretty long game with that one. In fact, I saved the council, but either in Mass Effect 3 or Mass Effect 2, if you saved the council, the human counselor, who was a bit of an asshole, actually reattempts to murder them and gets really close. So, like, your comment about them having really shitty security detail, they didn't learn.
Fair enough. Let's move on to Sky. What have you got in these decisions?
Well, usually I am pretty good at predicting them. At least I haven't done a lot of games with morality systems, but one that really sort of caught me off guard was the decisions you had to make in Tactics Over Let Us Cling Together. I was very fascinated by the fact that making the moral choices led me to the quote-unquote chaotic story route. Chaotic good, maybe. Yeah. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, it's interesting because I remember a quote from somewhere. I don't remember where it was. I know it was from a TV show, but I remember someone saying, like, there was a strategy session for like an assault on something, and the one of them was like, okay, well, what are we going to do to ensure that we save everybody and that there's no casualties? And the response from the tactician was, if you go into if you make a plan where everybody lives, everyone dies.
Yeah.
The strategist has to make those hard choices, and in a strategy game, you kind of have to play on that too, because you're the strategist.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No, absolutely. Like once he said that, it made perfect sense. I didn't want to question it at all.
Oh, sure. Like, winning fights takes a certain amount of risk. You can only play it so safe and expect to win. And if you lose in those situations, typically everybody dies. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
That's just not a realistic goal in war.
Yeah.
No, and that's the truth. Okay, let's move on to the final question. In everyone's opinion, what can or does make a morality system more engaging? So, Irene, let's get on that.
So for me, it's a spectrum rather than a binary. Like a lot of these morality systems in games, they present two options on opposite ends of the spectrum, good and evil. Like really simple, right? Except it's not how the world works. That's not how good storytelling works. And like I said in like the Bethesda games, like they don't necessarily do that. I would argue that they try to do a spectrum, but they fail and everyone is at the same end and it's shitty. So it's like there's like no like you need to have people that are definitely have good intentions but not necessarily the wherewithal to understand the full consequences of their actions. You have the people who are that are not necessarily like paragons of virtue, but ultimately don't necessarily want everything to burn to the ground. So like there's a lot of nuance in there that I find that these games like they lose a little bit. And I find that like in a lot of cases, because it's oversimplified, the binary is like the two choices that you're presented with are not opposite of each other. They're just not. I'm going back to Infamous, and while it was the first one, well, the first game that really presented this that I can remember playing for like the first choice you're presented with is you're locked down in a city that is under quarantine. And some food is dropped in to supply people. Now, there might not be enough food to go around for everybody. And your options are essentially like, I could help the food get distributed evenly and take some for myself, like enough that just what I need, essentially, right? For me and my friends. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing. And the other option is fucking kill everybody and take it all for myself. I'm like, those two things are not opposites. Opposites of like, I only take what I need is I take more than I need, but not necessarily I murder everyone to take more than I need. You know?
Yeah, it's a big jump that.
It just makes the bad choice almost a parody. Where it's like, yeah, we are reveling, like we are totally letting the player revel in just being a total asshole. And that's fine, but it feels like if you get a morality system that's too simple, that's kind of where you end up, where you've got these really polar opposite options, and they're not equal.
Mm-hmm.
They're not equal to each other in terms of consequence or even like moral weight. It's like we've all played World of Darkness RPGs, and it's like, your clarity roll for like stealing a pen, like for like stealing something out of a desk, is the same thing as your clarity roll for eating a baby. Those two things are not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, for me, one of the things I love about these types of systems is when it imports your choices to the next game in a series, for example, like the Mass Effect games. And then what they do is they do a recap of the story, which also kind of highlights which decisions you made throughout the game. And then they also give you this vague notion of whether or not there's going to be an impact either in this game or in a future game from that choice. I think that's one of the things I've really liked. There's been a couple of other games, non-RPGs, that did that. I'm thinking Dreamfall Chapters, for example, where it gave the recap at the ending of all of your decisions per game, per chapter. But this was, it really gives you an idea of which choices you made, and also kind of gives you an idea of what the weight was of each of those choices. And I really always liked that. Something that you thought was a big decision might have just been, a tiny grain in the overall sand of in the grand scheme of things. And it really speaks to the development of the games in terms of that kind of care that's put into it. I mean, obviously they didn't do that with the ending of Mass Effect 3, but that's a whole nother story, and we're not getting into that conversation right now.
So I'll just point out that one game that was really good at doing that, not necessarily porting over, but showing you the chain of events that stemmed from your decisions that you sometimes had to make in a split second, was Until Dawn. It's a horror game, but I thought it wasn't necessarily morality. It was, I need to make this split second decision, and it would show you, like in a dedicated page in the menu, you've made this choice. And once it got to the end and showed you the outcome, it would show you the progression of the chain of events that led from that choice to this outcome. So, like in your next playthrough, you could very clearly see which choices you had made and where they went.
Yeah, Tactics Ogre had something like that. A chart. Oh, they had a name for it. I can't remember it now. Been far too long since I've played that game, but that allowed you to sort of track your choices. And I think you could, even after your first playthrough, like bounce around a little bit in the story.
Yeah, Until Dawn, I think what they did was for subsequent playthroughs, they marked the choice you made the last time.
Yeah.
So that you could see, like, I made this decision last time. Do I want to make the same decision, or do I want to make a different decision? Mm-hmm. And they weren't morality choices in that regard. Like, definitely there were some that had moral implications, but often they were like, what do I need to do to ensure that this character keeps living? And there were certain choices where it was definitely like you felt like you had to make, basically it was life or death decisions for other characters in the story.
Yeah.
Right.
Based on very limited information. So you didn't necessarily get to see what the consequences of your actions were for quite a ways through the game. And I actually really liked that. So like once it was unlocked, it would give you a little icon on the screen and be like, hey, you now see like you've made a choice. And then later on it would give you another icon and say, hey, the consequence has been revealed. Go check it out. And you can see the progression of how that choice impacted things.
All right, Sky, is there anything left to say that hasn't already been said?
Well, my major thing is that the choices need to have real consequences to have any weight. There are too many games out there, and frankly, a lot of JRPGs are bad for this. They give you the illusion of making a choice, And then you realize shortly thereafter that the story has proceeded with minimal or no change, no matter what you've picked. It's silly in most cases. Like, why did you even bother?
Yeah, why did you bother to let me think that my decision mattered?
I mean, I remember, as much as I love it, I remember Fire Emblem Awakening being very much like this. Like, whenever they gave you, like, a prompt for your character to actually say something, which was usually presented as some sort of major moment, and then you realize, like, oh, that really wasn't it. Especially the second go through where I did most of a second playthrough of Awakening. I don't think I finished it, and then it was then I realized, like, oh, it really didn't matter what I said, which didn't really make a lot of sense when you were the army's tactician.
Yeah, the Walking Dead games, like the Telltale games, were also pretty infamous for that. After a while, like for a little while, the illusion was fine because the story was still solid,
Yeah.
and it didn't necessarily like not make a difference what you were doing, but it was a bit of after a while with repetition, it got to be like, okay, I see what you're doing, and my choices don't matter. Great.
Yeah, it's not ideal. It's much better when they actually have some weight. I wanted to relay this little story actually. You guys have all played this game, but you might not remember this moment, but I do because I've played this game 7 times. There's a moment in the original Suikoden where Gremio asks to come along, and if you try to refuse him, he won't accept no for an answer. Now, knowing what you know about Gremio, think about playing through that scene a second time.
Just stay home, Meg, man.
And realizing that this scene happens directly before Sonier prison. So it's one of those things where, different approaches can be used in very different ways and be effective simply about context, simply in terms of context, but often they're wielded too much like in Awakening, where it didn't really matter.
Yeah, so yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for today. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on morality. So on the morality systems in games. If you've got anything, please give us a shout. You can find me on Twitter at BillionairesXP, and I'll be on Twitch at Rafe Fegrim, all one word. So Sky, where can people find you?
All right, I'm at Skyknight XP on Twitter and on Twitch. Stay tuned on Twitter for finding out what my next streaming project will be. I haven't decided yet because I've been too busy healing.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah, let's definitely keep watch for that. Irene, where are you?
I'm at irogue_XP on Twitter and irogueXP on Twitch. And as I stated earlier, my intent is to go through with a stream of Horizon Zero Dawn so that we
Nice.
can get some badass, fiery redhead Aloy kicking some robot dinosaur butt.
I like it. And you can always check out the WordPress account, the site that we've got, xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. Irene will have some stuff coming up, and hopefully we'll have some more info, more text-related stuff coming out in the future too. And as always, we're still working on our donation goal for some new mics. You can always check that out, coffee.com/xpbillionaires. All right. Well, at this point, we're going to sign off for now. So, as always, keep gaming. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye!